Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have the Game Week 3 preview. In this weekly series you ask me questions over on Twitter and I answer them to the best of my ability to try and help you prepare for the upcoming game week. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. But without further ado, let's jump into today's video. So guys, I'm actually recording this immediately after the Liverpool game. So it ended about 5 minutes ago, jumping straight on here and recording this video. I've actually had another very, very good week. And I thought I would just sum up how my week's gone, look ahead to Game Week 3 very briefly, and then remind you of my watch list before I get on to answering your questions. I just think that it's useful to know where my head's at and where my team's at before I start to give you guys advice. So Game Week 2 was another really good week, 78 points. I think we scored similar in Game Week 1 as well, which puts us at 157 points overall. So really solid start to the season. That does put my rank at 65k-ish, about sort of 65 to 75k, and I'm delighted with that. But as I've said for a while now, rank really doesn't matter until about game week 12, 14, when it starts to settle down and we start to spread out. At the moment, I have one bad week and I'll be back up in the millions again. So if you've got a really poor rank at the moment, even if it's something like sort of 5, 6, 7 million, it doesn't matter at all. We've only had 2 weeks. As long as you've got some points on the board, you can build on that. And in a few weeks, you might be up at 65k and I might be down at sort of 4 or 5 million. You never know. So keep plugging away. Don't stress too much about your rank. But obviously, for those of us that have had a good start, such as myself, it's a very good position to be in, and you'd rather have a good start than a bad start. The team did very well in general. Trippier, James, Cancelo pulling through massively, as I said for a while now. Those were really good in game week 1, 2. Martinelli getting an 8-pointer, Jesus 19. Haaland getting 1 return, but he did actually outscore Salah, who was the second sort of favourite captaincy choice this week. And then Diaz is the big one, who's just scored in the game that I've just watched. Robertson blanks, Darwin gets sent off. Nothing really from Trent. Salah blanks too, and Diaz is the one to come away with an attacking return. So you can call it luck, you can call it whatever you want, but I am absolutely delighted. And like I said, this has put me in a really good position, because if we just skip ahead to sort of my Game Week 3 team selection, again, we're not going to talk about this for too long, but just to show you, I'm in a really good position with 2 free transfers and £1 million in the bank. So for my current team, before we're going to giving you advice for this week, I'm currently looking at that Trippier position in defence that I might potentially transfer out, and I'm looking at that Bailey spot in midfield. The other 9 players in my starting 11, I'm extremely happy with, and I can't see myself changing those 9 players for the foreseeable future. And to be honest, even the bench is pretty strong. Assuming Andreas is fit, I've got Andreas Pereira against Brentford or Williams against Everton that I can bring in. So we've had a really solid start to the season for the first 2. I'm not getting carried away by any means. I'm not saying I'm going to win FPL, but a really solid start. And the team's very well set up for Game Week 3 with 2 free transfers, £1 million in the bank. Just to remind you guys, this is what my Game Week 3 watch list is currently looking like ahead of the upcoming game week. I have updated this. The 2 new additions are actually 2 Brighton players, because as we'll discuss in a second, their fixtures are absolutely unbelievable. And I've added Pascal Gross and Welbeck to that list, along with Dunk. So I've got 3 Brighton players, and I've also got 5 Brentford players too. I've actually added Jensen to this list as well. A lot of people were discussing him. I do think he's a very good £5 million option. So this is the way the watch list looks. That's the way my team looks, just so that you've got it in your head as I'm starting to give you advice throughout this video. That's my current position. But without further ado, let's move on to the next part. So guys, before we move on to the specific questions that were asked, I thought I'd just give you a few sort of broad macro points about the upcoming fixtures and some potential fixture swings as well, and the teams that we should be looking to target and maybe sell from too. So just to start with, you guys will know this if you've been keeping up to date with the content and looking at the fixtures yourself, but Brighton and Brentford both topped the fixture ticker from Game Week 3 to Game Week 8. Depending which fixture ticker you look at, Arsenal are in there as well, but we've pretty much all of us have got either double or triple Arsenal already. So Brighton and Brentford are the 2 teams that are now entering the fixture ticker at the top of the list. And I definitely think that they are the 2 teams with your transfers at the moment, unless you want to get on the likes of Martinelli that you don't already have. They're probably the 2 teams that I would be targeting with your transfers as immediately as possible, because from Game Week 3, their fixtures are brilliant. Specifically for Brentford, they've got Fulham in Game Week 3, whereas Brighton have West Ham. So if you are targeting sort of one of these teams, I'd start with Brentford and then maybe Brighton from Game Week 4, but both of them are definitely worth investing in the upcoming game weeks. And the 2 teams that have now switched to the bottom of the fixture ticker are actually Newcastle and Wolves. So they now rank bottom of the fixture ticker from Game Week 3 to Game Week 8. Potentially it's time to start looking at offloading their assets. What I would say about Newcastle and Wolves is that if you can rotate them out, their fixtures aren't actually that terrible. And Wolves in particular, their fixtures for sort of game week 5, 6, and potentially game week 7, I believe, they're actually not that bad, but then game week 8 and 9 are pretty poor. So you might be able to get away with keeping the likes of a Trippier or potentially keeping like a Bruno G or an Almiron or a Neto. So you don't have to sell them, but potentially if you've got those spots in your team anyway, considering we've got some real gems from Brighton and Brentford, maybe now's the time to make that switch there. And I've just put here, Spurs actually rank 5th for fixture difficulty from game week 3 to game week 8. So they're not quite as good as Brentford, Brighton, Arsenal, etc. But their fixtures have definitely improved. And this is probably the run that you want to own Spurs assets from. They've got Wolves, then Nottingham Forest in the next 2. So maybe now's the time to potentially start looking at a Perisic if you think he's going to start in game week 3. If you already own Son and Kane, I definitely wouldn't be selling. Maybe you make the £8 million switch. If you've already got Mount and you can afford it, if you've got a bit of money in the bank, maybe you make that switch to Kulusevski. So maybe now's the time to start looking at Spurs. And then this is a little bit looking ahead, but I like to try and do this. And this is why I think I've improved in FPL in recent years. I'm by no means a perfect manager, but I've improved in recent years due to looking at things like this. And it's just looking a couple of weeks ahead. And if you are looking to wildcard around sort of game week 9, that's why I'm looking until game week 8, because most of us will be wildcarding in that international break between game week 8 and game week 9. Leeds actually are top of the fixture ticker from game week 5 to game week 8. So for 5, 6, 7, 8, that 4 fixture run, Leeds actually topped the fixture ticker. So if you're maybe looking like at a Bailey replacement, as we'll get onto in one of the future sections, maybe like an Aronson, Rodrigo, or Harrison is actually the play. Yes, they've got a tricky fixture in game week 3 against Chelsea, but from 5 onwards, which is a couple of game weeks away, their fixture is actually very good. So maybe you can start to get ahead of the curve, or potentially you can hold off for a couple of weeks and then look to move in game week 5. But this is something I really like to do. And as you'll see it rotating above my head throughout the video, you can get this fixture ticker that I'm using from Fantasy Football Hub. I believe it's actually one of the free features, but you can get 50% off if you want a paid sort of membership across the season. For as little as £1.50 a month, you can get access to most of their features. But I use the fixture ticker throughout the season. It just lets me plan ahead a little bit and look at what sort of teams I want to be targeting for the upcoming game weeks. But realistically, for me, it's Brighton and Brentford. And then over the next couple, maybe I'll start to look at Leeds as well. Right, fingers crossed this isn't too small. I've just about managed to get 14 players on this list here. And to be honest, I've had to cut out 4 or 5 players that I also wanted to discuss. What I'm looking at here is essentially all of the budget midfielders from about 4.5 million, so Andreas is the cheapest, up to 6 million, or I've got Rodrigo and Martinelli. Obviously, they've had recent price rises, but they are up about £6 million. So I'm looking at that budget midfield spot. And the reason for that is a lot of us own Bailey, Neto, Rashford, and then there are probably a couple of others that you might have taken punts on, but specifically Bailey, Neto, and Rashford are the 3 that I received at least sort of 10 to 15 questions on. Should we be looking to sell Bailey and Neto and Rashford? If so, who should we be looking to bring in? I'll be completely honest, at this stage of the season, when we've only had 2 game weeks, and this is the data that I've got in front of you, to be honest, it's too small of a sample size really to look at anything too meaningful. You can still look at a couple of bits here, but realistically, if you're trying to draw meaningful conclusions from this, it's probably too small of a sample size. This is why I don't recommend wildcarding at this stage, because the data set is just far too small. But when you are making decisions based on only a couple of game weeks, it really does come down to just what do you feel? What is your gut feeling? What have you seen with a bit of eye test, a little bit of statistics? At the end of the day, I can't give you a good objective opinion based on what I've seen because we haven't seen enough. When it gets to sort of where I've had 10 to 12 game weeks of data, I can look at the underlying data. I've watched a couple of games. I feel like I can give you slightly more objective opinions and I can give you slightly better sort of almost facts. These are the numbers here. Whereas with this, it just feels too small. So what I've done here is I've basically put all of the players that I'm considering. The only one that's not on this list that I did want was Lingard, but it was getting so small, this table, that I didn't quite squeeze him in. So Lingard is a decent option. I know some people down below will also mention that. And there are some other ones in there. For example, like Fornals isn't on this list. I've got Ben Rama instead. Pedence you could still have from Wolves, but again, there are far too many. And it just goes to show that there are options at this sort of budget, mid-price midfield spot. I've been saying for a while there are no options. I want to sell Bailey, but there's no one to go for. There are a lot of players to go for. It's just none of them particularly stand out at the moment, apart from the more expensive ones. And a lot of us might struggle to get there. Regardless of that, on this table, what you can see, hopefully you can see it. Apologies if it is a bit small. We've got minutes as the first column, just to let you know, have they played up to 180 minutes would be the most. And then obviously down below 90 minutes would suggest that they've played less than one full fixture. You've then got projected points from game week 3 to game week 8, again, because a lot of us will be looking to wildcard between game week 8 and game week 9. I've then got their non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90. Again, very small sample size, but it just gives you something to look at here. And then I've got their fixture difficulty from an attacking perspective from the Fantasy Football Hub website from game week 3 to game week 8. So putting that all together, when I do these stats tables, I highlight in sort of the most luminous green there when they've got the best stat of all of the players on this list. The slightly more faded green is second, and then the very faded green is sort of third, fourth, fifth, etc. So just by glancing at the colours, you can tell that Martinelli is the one that stands out. He's at 180 minutes, so he's played a lot of minutes. He's pretty much played every minute available for Arsenal. Projected points-wise, he's top of the list at 32.5, which is absolutely exceptional. Definitely tops the list on the hub algorithm from all of the players on this list. And his non-penalty expected goal involvement is very good at 0.8. The thing that I love about Martinelli is that, of course, his data from last season and even the season before that when he burst onto the scene at the back end of the season, ever since he's come into the Prem, he's shown very, very, very good underlying data, significantly better than what you would expect from a £6 million midfielder. So despite him going up to 6.2, despite him being quite heavily owned, considering the fixtures, considering what we've seen so far and the projected points, I would personally put Martinelli above pretty much every midfielder in the game, unless you're looking at the premiums. I'd put him above pretty much every £8 million mid as well. So if you're looking for a midfield transfer and you don't own Martinelli, even if you already own triple Arsenal, I would look for a way to bring Martinelli in. He looks like an exceptional option. Rodrigo has the best underlying data from the first two fixtures, but again, very small sample size, 1.25 non-penalty expected goal involvement, which, to put that into perspective, is significantly better than Salah and Haaland from like last season. So he's never going to keep that up, but very promising start. The one that I actually wanted to highlight, though, is actually Harrison. I think Harrison has looked very, very good. He's obviously got some attacking returns already. His non-penalty expected goal involvement has been decent as well, but he's just really passed the eye test along with Rodrigo. Yes, Aronson has been really good, and Aronson at 5.5 might be the best value option. But I really like the look of Harrison moving forward. And you can see his pictures on here because I think he's one of the ones that I am definitely considering ahead of their upcoming fixture run. Like I said, from Game Week 5 to Game Week 8, their fixtures look really good. So maybe jumping on Harrison sooner rather than later, especially as Rodrigo has now gone up in price. That might be a good move for me. I can actually get from Bailey to Harrison in one move. There are a few sort of spicy picks on here. The likes of Damari Gray might be a slightly sort of differential, exciting pick. He has been known to haul in the past, but he also can go quite a few games where he gets absolutely nothing for you. And Ben Rama's another one on this list. The Fantasy Football Hub algorithm doesn't massively fancy him at 10.9 projected points, but I do think he could be a slightly exciting option. He was very unlucky not to get any attacking returns against Nottingham Forest. I've put Neto and Bailey on this list just to show you, if you look at their underlying data, again, small sample size, I will keep reinforcing that. But Bailey and Neto have had a few decent chances. 0.47 and 0.45 expected goal involvement isn't the worst on this list by any means. So when you're looking at potentially like Aronson's at 0.1, so people say Aronson has been unlucky not to get an attacking return. He's actually got really poor data, which would suggest he hasn't had any clear-cut opportunities and he hasn't created many clear-cut opportunities either. So maybe Bailey and Neto aren't the worst holds in the world, but due to the fixtures that they've got coming up, I may be looking to sell Bailey anyway. Neto's a slightly trickier one because Wolves, like I said, from Game Week 4 to about Game Week 6, their fixtures aren't that bad, Wolves. So I feel like Bailey is, for me, almost definitely going to be the one that I sell this week, whereas Neto, I think there's slightly more justification to keep him potentially. Let me know down below what you're currently planning with Neto and Bailey. Other players on this list, you do have the two Brentford midfielders, De Silva and Jensen. Neither of them particularly blowing us away with what we've seen so far. De Silva obviously has two attacking returns. I think Jensen has the one, but they both look like they could be decent options. Very cheap price at 5 million and 4.6 respectively. So I don't mind the Brentford players. And again, when you look at the fixture ticker, they are third on the fixtures from an attacking perspective over the next 5 or 6 game weeks. So I think you could definitely do worse than the Brentford boys. And then you've got Andreas in there just to show that, again, we haven't seen that much from Andreas. He's passed the eye test, but underlying data-wise, we haven't seen that many clear-cut opportunities for him. So this is just the list to say these are the ones that I'm considering. Like I said, you might want to chuck Lingard in there as the 15th player. I can't give you much objective advice. I can't say that this is the best player to go for. This player is demonstrating the best underlying data, therefore I would buy them, because 2 games isn't enough. And even for the eye test, 2 games isn't enough. We don't know, specifically with the fact that some teams have had really good fixtures, some teams have had terrible fixtures. We haven't even taken that into account here. Some teams get off to a slow start. Some teams might have been unlucky. So I want to see, maybe for me, once we get 5 or 6 game weeks worth of data, I can start to give you significantly better opinions and I can start to present the data a little more comfortably. For now, just pick the player that you think you like the look of moving forward. When we don't have a lot of data to go off, I would definitely edge towards the player with the better fixtures. So for me, the likes of Bailey with 14th best fixtures, or KDH with the 13th, or even like Andreas with the 19th best, I would probably avoid these players, because if we've got not got a lot of data to go on, why would you bring a player with tricky fixtures? Whereas the likes of a Martinelli, or even like the Leeds boys, who again from Game Week 5 have got great fixtures, or Brighton or Brentford players, at the very least they've got decent fixtures coming up, and you would expect that therefore it might not be them, but the team in general should accumulate quite a few chances over those game weeks. So If I had to say for now from this list, again, you saw my watch list earlier, Martinelli would be top, but I already own him. So if you don't own him, definitely look at Martinelli. Then I do really like either a Brighton, Brentford, or Leeds midfielder. And then if you're looking to be a little bit spicy and attack the upcoming game week against Nottingham Forest, I don't mind someone like a Gordon or a Gray. Just be careful with the rumours that Gordon's potentially looking to move away from Everton. So that is the list there. Let me know down below. Like I said, are you looking to sell one of sort of Bailey, Neto, Rashford? And if you are, is it anyone on this list you're considering, or are you potentially considering someone else? Always interested to hear your thoughts. So the next question was basically, what is my updated ranking of the £8 million midfielders? And again, once again, this is just my opinion at this stage. There's not a lot to go off. For me, it hasn't actually changed too drastically. So you remember I did an entire video ranking my £8 million mids in pre-season. Not a lot has changed from that. Realistically, the only changes for me, I think Mahrez is definitely the worst option. Now, yes, he could start in game week 3, but clearly he is not in Pep's favoured 11. And to be honest, he might not even be the favoured sort of 12th or 13th player. I think potentially Alvarez is ahead of him there. And I think Pep's favoured front three at the moment is Haaland, Foden and Grealish, with, again, maybe Alvarez, maybe Mahrez coming off the bench. Bernardo Silva can play an advanced role if he does stay. So I think they've got enough options. And for me, Mahrez, I said this at the start of the season, I actually ranked Mahrez 6 out of 7. So I've always said that for me, he's just too much for rotation risk. But I think we've confirmed that in game week 1 and 2. So Mahrez drops to the bottom and Mason Mount actually drops. I think we had him at 3rd or 4th in pre-season. He drops all the way to 6th for me. He doesn't look as nailed. He obviously got pulled off early in game week 1. I can't remember in game week 2, but he definitely got pulled off early around the sort of 64th minute, I think it was, in game week 1. He did look a little bit better against Spurs in game week 2, and it's not necessarily an easy fixture, but he just doesn't quite look himself. He's not creating the sort of opportunities that we've seen. And realistically, when I'm looking at Chelsea, I'm thinking the goals and the chances and everything looks like it's going to be flowing through Raheem Sterling. He's the most advanced player. He's the one getting into the box. And we saw that at City as well. Sterling does sort of hog a lot of the high XG opportunities, a lot of the tap-ins. So I don't doubt that Mount will get 10, 15, 20 attacking returns across the season. I truly believe that. Most of them will be assists. He'll get a few goals as well. But for now, I'm just not completely convinced. The issue you've got with Mason Mount, as we'll discuss in the final section, is he is playing Leeds in game week 3. And he scored both times against Leeds last season in both games. Whether you want to pay attention to that, it's up to you. But maybe Mount isn't the best sell ahead of game week 3, but again, you just get to that stage where you're holding, and there are some other really good options in and around that price, and even cheaper, like I said, with the likes of Martinelli, saving sort of 1.8 million on Mount. So it's up to you. Let me know down below again if you're looking to sell Mount, who are you potentially moving to? Because Mason Mount has moved his way down, Kulusevski has made his way up the list slightly. So sort of, I would say Kulusevski and Maddison are fairly close for me. I think they're both excellent options, but their underlying data isn't quite as good as the likes of Foden, Diaz and Saka. And Kulusevski is still a slight rotation risk. Maddison is very nailed on, but the issue with Maddison is that his fixtures aren't fantastic at the moment. So for those reasons, Kulusevski being a slight rotation risk, and obviously Maddison not having the easiest fixtures. And again, Kulusevski, even when he plays well, Kulusevski's data last season wasn't that great. It was actually the worst on the list of all 7, £8 million midfielders. So for that reason, Kulusevski and Maddison are just a little bit lower than who I would put in 3rd place at the moment, which is Foden. I think Foden's looked really good in game week 1 and 2. The only issue is, in game week 2, obviously, he failed to pass to Haaland on 1 or 2 occasions, and Pep subbed him at half-time. I haven't actually seen any sort of interview stuff from Pep. I don't know if that was just to rest him, if it was a tactical sub, or if it was punishment because he didn't pass on a few occasions, because we know Pep does not like greediness. He likes the players to play those passes. So I don't actually know what the reason for that. That might be something to keep an eye on. But Foden has always shown really good data, pretty much consistently stays above a 0.6 expected goal involvement. So I like Foden moving forward. The fixtures are good for City, and I think he'll continue to get attacking returns. But for me, as it was at the start of the season, my favourite two are probably Saka and Diaz. The thing is with Saka, for 1.8 million less, you get Martinelli, who is absolutely fantastic. And then I think there's brilliant, obviously, most of us will have Gabriel Jesus. And then I think there's a lot of value in the likes of Ramsdale, Gabriel, Saliba, whoever you want to choose from the defence. Zinchenko, of course, a fantastic option too. So that's the only issue you've got with Saka. Do you want to pay 8 million when you can get Jesus as the more expensive player, plus Martinelli, plus a defender? That's the reason I don't currently have Saka. But in and of his own right, I do expect Saka to do really well. They've got Bournemouth and Fulham in the next 2. I would probably be looking to keep Saka, which again we'll discuss in the final section, but I still think he'll be good value moving forward. And I would argue the best or joint best with Saka is Luis Diaz. This isn't just because he scored in game week 2. I just think that playing in that Liverpool front line, yes, they haven't looked great in the first 2 Liverpool, but I expect that to change very soon. They'll continue to create chances, they'll continue to score goals. And Luis Diaz looks fairly now, with Jota still not back from his injury, with Darwin now being banned for 3 games. Diaz should start and play almost every minute for Liverpool. And when he does, we've seen the talent and ability that he has. So that's the way that I would rank the £8 million mids at the moment. Let me know down below what your updated rankings would be. For me, Luis Diaz and Saka are sort of the safest bets. Foden and Kulusevski, if you want to take a slight risk with playing time, but both have that explosive ability. And then Maddison might be a player that, you know what, you just hold regardless of fixtures. He continues to tick along, continues to get attacking returns, and I think he'll probably accumulate close to what we saw last season, assuming he can stay fit. So guys, just some final questions asked, and just a reminder, if you do want to ask the questions each week, if you're a member or a patron, obviously you have priority questions. You can ask me any questions you want, but you can also have priority questions if there's something specific you want me to answer. But also just follow me over on Twitter every single week before I record this video, normally on a Monday or a Monday morning. I'll ask for your questions over on Twitter. You give them to me and I'll answer the ones that have been liked the most and asked the most as well. So do follow me at FPL__Raptor. These are just some of the final questions that I obviously don't have enough time, space, etc. to answer in a lot of detail, but I think are still worth mentioning. Again, we discussed it slightly in some detail earlier on. Would I sell Mason Mount ahead of Leeds? Potentially not, but I do understand why. I think, again, if you don't own someone like a Martinelli or you fancy a cheaper mid, and that will allow you to use those funds to potentially upgrade and get like James in defence or Cancelo in defence, then it probably is worth it. But if you're sat there happy with your team and you don't really have anyone that you'd like to move to, maybe give him one more week. But again, if he doesn't look great against Leeds, don't look at does he get a goal? Look at is he getting in the opportunities? What sort of expected data does he accumulate? Do you expect that to continue in the future? Once you can start to answer those questions, maybe look to either sell him or keep him after that. So it really depends on who you're looking at and what you can do with that 8 million that you can sell Mason Mount for. For me, I'd be tempted to keep him, but I also understand if you want to sell him. The second question is it worth selling Robertson to allow an upgrade to Bailey/Neto? Now, Robertson did come off, I think, after 62 minutes. I think that was tactical and just to get a bit more energy on that side with the Simicast. Obviously, if he's injured, then that's an easy decision to make. I would sell him. But if he's not, assuming that was a tactical sub, I would be keeping Robertson. We know how good Robertson is. Every single season, he accumulates so many points, and he doesn't usually go long periods without points. He's extremely consistent. Every 2 or 3 games, maximum, he's getting an attacking return or a clean sheet of some kind. So yes, Liverpool haven't started the season well. Yes, it's frustrating for those of you that own Trent and Robertson that they're costing you so much money. No attacking returns, no clean sheets. But I don't think you should necessarily react too much to that. That's outcome bias. Listen, Robertson is a fantastic option alongside Trent, and I still think at 7 million, you're unlikely to find better value in any other player across the game outside of Robertson. So this is coming from a Robertson non-owner. I'm petrified every time I see him on the ball. He was picking up some excellent positions in both Game Week 1 and Game Week 2. He could have easily had an attacking return or two. I would personally be keeping Robertson, but I do understand if that's the only way to allow you to upgrade Bailey or Neto and you want to get to an £8 million mid, or you want to get to someone that you can't quite afford otherwise, maybe it's worth it when you look at the transfers in combination. But in isolation, I'm not a massive fan of selling Robertson myself. The third question is it too early to wildcard? How long until we can wildcard? I still think it's a little bit early. Again, when I'm looking at how much data before I can start to make meaningful sort of conclusions and make good decisions, I'm probably looking at 4 to 6 game weeks. And right now, we've only had 2 game weeks. Some of the stuff that happened in Game Week 1, the likes of Mitrovic and Darwin looking fantastic. Again, it's very unlucky, but both of them scoring minus points in Game Week 2. Everyone wrote Kane off in Game Week 1, then he gets an attacking return in Game Week 2, and everyone's saying, maybe we keep him. Everyone was saying big on forwards, and now the midfielders are actually looking like decent value. So things are changing so quickly that, for me, I think you need at least 4 to 6 game weeks of information before you can be looking to wildcard and make effective use of the information we've got. The fourth question is, can we start Patterson, Williams, Andreas and co? I think yes to all 3, assuming Andreas is fit. I think Patterson, Williams and Andreas all have great fixtures. I would probably actually lean to Patterson. I think the fixture against Forest is absolutely fantastic. Outside of that, Andreas and Williams are fantastic options there, and I would be perfectly happy starting either of them there. So yes, don't feel threatened to start them just because of their... or don't feel like you shouldn't start them just because of their price. Ignore their price. They're good options with good fixtures. I'd be happy starting all of them. And then the final question is, would I transfer Saka to Martinelli? I think assuming you've got nothing else to do with your team and assuming you want to use that money on something, yes, I would. I don't think if they were the same price, I don't think Martinelli is necessarily a better option than Saka. However, when you take into account the savings, then yes, of course, Martinelli, in my opinion, is a better option. That's why I started the season with Martinelli. So I think if you've got nothing else to do, and that would really allow you to upgrade your team with the extra money that you would save, maybe do Saka to Martinelli. I think if you've got other transfers that are more of a priority, or you don't really need the money, maybe just stick with Saka. As far as we know, he could still be on penalties. The underlying data wasn't poor from the first 2. He actually accumulated quite a high expected assist over the first 2 games, specifically in Game Week 2. So I think Saka will be in the points. I don't think you necessarily need to make that transfer, but with the savings and how good Martinelli looks, I definitely don't blame you for making that transfer. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 3 preview. I do hope this was helpful for you, and hopefully you enjoy this series throughout the season. It's definitely one of the most popular series here on my channel. If you have any dilemmas that I didn't answer in this video, I do apologize, but do drop them down below and I'll do my best to answer them. And if I haven't answered any of the comments down below and you feel like you can help some of your fellow FPL managers, please do so. It's very interesting to see some of you reply to each other and give each other advice. And I often read through the messages and they actually help me quite a lot. So do help each other out and I'll do my best to help you too. If you are enjoying the content, like I said before, only 50% of the people that watch these videos, it's actually gone up to about 55%. 55% of you don't subscribe to the channel. And even more than that, about sort of 70, 80% don't like the videos either. So if you're watching this and you're someone that's never liked a video and you don't subscribe to the channel, do drop a like on the video, do subscribe and tune into all of the weekly content. We have at least sort of 3 or 4 pieces of weekly content here on my channel every single week. So if you want help with your FPL team throughout the week, this is the channel and the place to be. But without further ado, thanks for watching, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye.